And it is Tuesday, and I'm here with you live to talk about something that I know a lot of people are interested in, which is how do we get the energy, the emotional energy especially, although we could talk about physical energy too, but how do we get the emotional energy to give our kids what they need and to get through this time, which is so exhausting? Because I can tell you all the strategies to help your kids behave better, to help your kids feel better, but if we're being honest, a lot of that takes energy. And if you don't have any energy to give, then not only do you now know the tools, but you don't have the energy to implement those tools. And so you're going to feel guilty. So, what I really want to focus on, and this is what I'm going to focus on in the podcast episode this week, is where does this energy come from to do all these things that our kids need and to really get through this time without being snappy at our kids or impatient or unpredictable. So, what I want to start with is most of you know that there are ways we can get energy through what is, in a very cliche way, called self-care. When we take care of ourselves, and that's not actually what I'm going to talk about today, but when we do take care of ourselves, let's say our kids are taking a lot of our energy or our lives are taking a lot of our energy, when we practice self-care are activities and tasks that we do that give us energy back. So this could be time with friends, this could be a massage, this could be a haircut, this could be a date with your spouse or whatever it is that you do to take care of yourself. And that is all incredibly important, but that's not the suggestion I have this time. Because very honestly, a lot of the things that you may do for self-care aren't available right now. You might not be able to go get a massage right now. You might not be able to get time with, get a babysitter to have time with your spouse or a friend. So that isn't even available to us. So what I want to do is introduce a new concept that since we can't give you more energy, I want to teach you how to stop wasting energy. And that is using a concept that I call self-treatment. So I differentiate between self-care and self-treatment. And very honestly, there is a big distinction. And I'll tell you this, here's how you can think about it differently. Have you ever had a weekend away with your friends, pre-COVID of course, a weekend away with your friends or a really good day, or maybe you just got to do some things that you really enjoyed, and then you came back home and saw your kids again, and things were fine for a little while, but then you got exhausted really quickly, and you started losing your temper really quickly. What that is a sign to me is that a parent may have taken some time for self-care, but they're not treating themselves well. What I mean by self-treatment is literally how you treat yourself on a minute-to-minute, day-to-day basis. And very honestly, all the self-care in the world is not going to work if you don't treat yourself differently. I'm going to tell you specifically what I mean by that in a couple moments. But self-treatment is very simply how you are treating yourself. So here's the reason self-treatment is so important. And then again, I'm going to tell you, let me tell you now what I mean by self-treatment. It's things like, what are you expecting of yourself? Are you trying to control other people instead of controlling yourself? Are you thinking thoughts that actually waste energy? And all of these things together create what I call self-treatment. So let me tell you the science behind why this is so important, how this will actually get you energy back, and then it will give you some specific action steps to take. So the science behind why self-treatment is so important is because very basically, you all have heard me say this before, we are survival-based creatures. So what's happening is our brain on a minute-to-minute basis is scanning the environment to say, are we safe? Are we okay? Are we in a good place? Is everything fine? What happens is once our brain senses that we are too tired or too depleted, or we are trying to control someone else and we can't actually control them, so it's not working, any of those things are a sign to our brain that things are not okay. And when our brain senses that things are not okay because we're too tired or we can't control somebody, whatever the reason, our brain goes into what I call yuck, or the stress response or the fight or flight response. And the stress response or fight or flight response takes a tremendous amount of energy. So long story short, what's happening is the way we treat ourselves leads to a stress response, and that wastes a tremendous amount of energy. We are all in this constant place of stress. Now, you can't change that we are living in a global pandemic right now. You can't change what's going to happen for your kids in the fall. What you can change is how you treat yourself through this time. And what happens is when you are stressed, that's when you're going to be cranky and irritable and impatient with your kids and unpredictable, so that your kids never know what mood they're going to get from you. All of that is a sign that you are not treating yourself well, that you are in fight or flight, and it affects their behavior, which obviously affects you as well. So what am I talking about with self-treatment, and what can you do about it? So there are maybe 6 or 7 variables that I look at when I'm working with a parent to determine how they're treating themselves, how to get them out of a place of stress. But I just want to mention a few right now. These are the ones I'm going to mention on the podcast as well. First is your expectations of yourself. If you are expecting yourself to be calm and patient all the time, if you are expecting yourself to get everything done, if you are expecting yourself to do what you should do, and you're unable to do those things because you are home with your kids 24/7, that's going to bring about your stress response. You're going to go into fight or flight, and you are going to drain so much energy. You have to look at what you're expecting yourself to do. Does your brain look at your to-do list and think threat, threat, threat? Or does your brain look at your to-do list and say, we're safe, everything's okay? If you are in a threatened state because you are trying to do too much, unrealistically, you are wasting energy. Next example, if you were trying to control things that are out of your control, if you say something like, I'll be fine when my kids stop fighting, you can't actually control them. You can influence them a lot, and I talk about a lot of strategies to do that, but you can't control another human being. And what happens is, if you were trying to control someone else, when you can't do that, because you can't do that, your brain senses that as a threat, stress response, fight or flight, you are wasting so much energy. Another example is what you're telling yourself about the situation you're in. If you are telling yourself, this situation is awful, there are no solutions, I have no help, I can't do this, your brain immediately senses a threat. Those are all very threatening thoughts. You go into fight or flight, your stress response, you are wasting a tremendous amount of energy. So I can't tell you to go find more energy because you probably don't have time or the ability to do the self-care activities, but you absolutely can change your expectations of yourself. You can change what you're trying to control. You can change what you're telling yourself. I did a video on useful thoughts versus non-useful thoughts. Useful thoughts are thoughts that actually help you achieve a goal. You're not deluding yourself when you're thinking useful thoughts. They're accurate thoughts, but they help you achieve a goal. And then your brain senses, I'm safe, I'm okay, and you are not draining energy. 90% of us are spending so much time draining energy because of the expectations, because of what we're trying to control. We're trying to make everything better, with the people around us, with the future. You can't control any of that. So we're wasting so much energy. So I want you to think about, where are your stressors right now? And then ask yourself, are you expecting too much of yourself? Are you trying to control things that are out of your control? Are you thinking about it in a way that creates a threat? And if you are doing any of those things, you want to switch it. You want to shift your expectations so they're more realistic. And if you even need help dealing with the anxiety that comes up when you switch your expectations, we can talk about that. A really simple way, by the way, to deal with that is to create what I call an expectation later list. Things where you're going to change your expectation in the moment. You're going to change them back later when things get more normal. So put it on a later list. So you're telling your brain you're safe because you're not foregoing those expectations, like expectations about your child's screen time or about how much time you're going to spend with them. Those expectations can go on a later list. That's absolutely fine. So again, look at your expectations. Look at what you're trying to control. Look at what you are, if you're trying to make other people do things so you feel better, that's going to create a threat. You're going to get a stress response. And what are you telling yourself? We have complete control over what we tell ourselves about situations. And when we change our thoughts, we are not changing them to inaccurate thoughts. We are changing them to accurate thoughts that are useful. So obviously, if anyone needs any help with this, if you have any questions, feel free to post below. But ultimately, if you want to stop leaking energy, which we're all doing right now, think about how you are treating yourself on a minute-to-minute basis. Changing how you treat yourself takes zero extra time, no extra time. It just takes thinking about things differently. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you again next time. Take care.